Welcome to Things You Don't Know. Here's something you probably see almost every day: a red, eight-sided sign with four white letters. Stop. It seems so obvious that it's hard to imagine it looking any other way.
But it did. Early American stop signs were not necessarily red, and some of the people trying to standardize road signs actually decided that red was a bad choice.
And the octagon is an important part of the story. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, the unusual shape became standardized before the familiar red and white color scheme did.
So today, why are stop signs red? Why eight sides? And why did it take several decades for the United States to settle on the sign we recognize instantly today?
Well, Dr. Weaver, in the beginning, the road signs were a complete mess. In the early automobile era, there wasn't one national system of traffic signs. Cities, states, automobile clubs, and private organizations put up their own signs. Drivers traveling from one area to another could encounter completely different colors, shapes, words, and symbols.
Which probably wasn't much of a problem when automobiles were rare and slow. But once more cars appeared, people were driving farther and faster. Suddenly, you had to understand a sign quickly, not pull over and study it. You didn't have
Jeez.
time.
Yeah, that's true. The Federal Highway Administration dates the first stop sign to Detroit in 1915, but it didn't look like the modern sign. There was not yet a nationwide agreement saying a stop sign had to be a red octagon.
And that lack of uniformity became a severe safety problem. A driver shouldn't have to learn a new traffic language every time he crosses a state line.
That's right. Now, this is the part that I find quite surprising. Engineers began standardizing the shape of stop signs in the early 1920s before they had settled the color question, even.
In 1923, highway officials developed a system in which different shapes represented different degrees or types of danger. A circle warned of a railroad crossing, a diamond indicated caution, rectangles handled directions or other regulations, and the octagon meant stop.
Why an octagon?
Partly because it was distinctive, Dr. Weaver. Eight sides are unusual. The engineers deliberately reserved some of the more complicated shapes for especially important messages.
And there was another clever reason there, too. Roads in the 1920s weren't illuminated the way they are today, and signs didn't have modern reflective surfaces. At night, you might not be able to read the word on a sign, but you still might recognize its outline.
So even if all you could make out in your headlights was an eight-sided silhouette, you knew what it meant.
Exactly, shape itself became part of the language.
So why not just make it red? Well, we get to the strange part here. By the 1920s, red already had an obvious connection with stopping. Traffic control officials were proposing red as the color for stop.
So if red was the color for stop, then why did America spend all those years using yellow stop signs?
Because the red materials available at the time had a serious problem: visibility, especially at night. In 1924, the American Association of State Highway Officials considered sign colors and concluded that yellow provided better visibility for danger and caution signs. Red was rejected for the stop sign because its nighttime visibility was considered inadequate.
And that turns the usual explanation right on its head. We sometimes hear that stop signs are red simply because red is the easiest or most visible color.
And that's really too simple. Color visibility depends on lighting, background materials contrast, and the human visual system. Early traffic engineers had practical experience telling them that the red paints and surfaces they had weren't doing the job well enough after dark.
So, for a substantial part of early American motoring history, a driver could encounter an octagonal yellow stop sign, generally with dark lettering.
That's right, which would look really wrong to us today.
But that reaction proves how powerful standardization becomes. There's nothing inherently impossible about a yellow octagon meaning stop. No, drivers learned it because that was the system they were given.
The first national manual on uniform traffic control devices, the MUTCD, appeared in 1935. It was a major effort to bring order to the different systems being used around the country. Early standards still allowed versions of the stop sign that were very different from today's white on red design.
Meanwhile, red was becoming firmly established elsewhere in traffic control, most obviously in the red traffic signal.
So engineers had a desirable meaning for red. The problem was making a red sign that remained clearly visible when drivers actually needed to see it.
And this is where material science changes the sign right here.
Exactly. Improvements in finishes and reflective technology gradually made it possible to produce red signs that resisted fading and remained much more visible at night.
The key concept here is retroreflection. Now, ordinary reflection can scatter light in many directions. Retroreflective material is designed to send a substantial portion of incoming light back toward its source. So, when your headlights strike a properly made traffic sign, much of that light is returned toward your vehicle and therefore toward your eyes.
Yeah, which is why a modern road sign can appear almost to light itself when your headlights hit it.
And once engineers could combine a durable red surface with good nighttime visibility, one of the main objections to the red stop sign disappeared.
Yes, the decisive change came in 1954. A revision to the MUTCD established the familiar design: white letters and border on a red octagonal background. The Federal Highway Administration says the change resulted primarily from improved fade resistant finishes that could also provide adequate nighttime visibility.
So the red stop sign isn't just ancient tradition. If you were driving during the first half of the 20th century, the signs you saw could look noticeably different.
And ladies and gentlemen, the date matters because it shows that the modern sign was the product of several things coming together: traffic engineering, national standardization, manufacturing improvements, and most importantly, better reflective paints and materials.
Yeah, it wasn't simply red means danger, so somebody painted the sign red. No, no, no.
No, and once the technological problems were solved, red had some major advantages.
First, it was already associated with stopping through traffic signals. See our traffic signal podcast to learn more about that. That meant that the sign and the signal could reinforce the same message: stop.
Second, the contrast between white lettering and saturated red background produces a clear, simple sign without unnecessary information.
And perhaps most importantly, everybody now expects it. Recognition is nearly instantaneous because drivers see the same basic design repeatedly.
That is one of the central ideas behind traffic control standards. Uniformity reduces the amount of thinking the driver has to do. You don't want someone approaching an intersection at 40 miles an hour thinking, That's interesting. I wonder what that sign means.
No, you don't want that. You want recognition followed by action, which brings us back to those 8 sides. Suppose the sign is dirty. Suppose snow covers some of the lettering. Suppose glare makes the color difficult to see. Suppose it's nearly dark. You still have the shape.
And see, that's the beauty of the stop sign. That's what makes it unusual. It gives you multiple clues at once. The word stop, the color red, and the octagonal outline.
The Federal Highway Administration specifically describes the octagonal shape and red and white color combination as features that identify and differentiate the stop sign from other regulatory signs.
There's even an advantage when you're looking at the back of the sign. You may not see the red face or the word stop, but you can recognize the octagonal outline and understand that traffic approaching from the other direction is controlled by a stop sign.
So the octagon isn't just some decoration, it is redundant information, and redundancy is valuable when a mistake can cause a collision or a life threatening event.
And I'm pleased to tell you, folks, engineers haven't stopped improving the sign. Modern traffic signs use retro-reflective sheeting, and different materials can return different amounts of headlight illumination towards the driver.
The Federal Highway Administration research has examined whether increasing the retroreflectivity of stop signs improves safety. The results have been somewhat mixed, but higher retroreflectivity clearly increases nighttime visibility, which is particularly important in darkness, rain, and other reduced visibility conditions.
So, even something as simple as a stop sign continues to be an engineering problem. And how quickly can the driver detect it, recognize it, understand it, and most importantly, respond?
And that may be the most interesting thing about the stop sign. We tend to think of it as a written instruction.
But really, it is a visual system. The word is only one part of it.
Red tells you something serious is happening. The octagon identifies the command. The reflective material makes it visible at night. The white letters confirm the message. Stop!
And because nearly every stop sign follows the same design, we usually understand the message before we consciously read the letters.
So, why are stop signs red? Not because they always were, they weren't.
No, early traffic engineers actually preferred yellow in many cases because the red materials available to them didn't perform well enough at night.
But improvements in fade resistant and reflective materials eventually made red quite practical. In 1954, the red octagon with white lettering became the American standard that we recognize today.
And the octagon goes back even farther. Engineers wanted a shape drivers could identify when darkness or distance made the words difficult to read.
Which means that the ordinary stop sign at the end of your street represents about a century of experimentation in visibility, materials, human perception, and traffic engineering.
And once you know that, it becomes a little harder to look at one as just a piece of red metal beside the road. Listen, I want to thank you for joining us today and for Dr. Deneen and Chandler Foster. I bid you goodbye for today and ask you to come back, give us a like and comments. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye bye.